Genesis chapter 19, these two men who are with the pre-incarnate Christ, as Christ visited Abraham on his way to destroy Sodom, actually arrive at Sodom, and they stop at Lot's house, who lives just on the outskirts of Sodom. Now, Sodom has a reputation, right? It has a reputation for unrighteousness. It has a reputation for debauchery and sinfulness. The people in Sodom spend their time and their energy pursuing self-desires. And we know this because in the text in Genesis chapter 19, men from the city see that Lot has visitors. They come out to Lot's house, make it a point to come out to Lot's house because they're obviously not satisfied with the sin they have available to them in Sodom. So they come out to Lot's house and they demand that Lot give them these men so that they may have relations with these men. In this, we see what unrighteousness really is. We see why Sodom is condemned. And now people will make many arguments for and against the idea that homosexuality is directly represented in the text. People will make arguments based on certain sins involving men and young men, or rape even, right? But I want to get at something a little more basic than this. When these men come out to Lot's house, they are seeking to fulfill their own desires. Their intents are obviously selfish. They obviously have a sense of entitlement about them, which is where all sin begins, especially sexual sin. It is me trying to fulfill my own desires, my own lusts, and ultimately satisfy myself. Well, these two men who are with Lot, they blind all those guys, right? And they weary themselves trying to get into the house. And we notice something else about sin. It wearies us because we are always having to try to get our next fix, right? To have our next drink, to satisfy ourselves one more time, and our behaviors become more and more intense and closer in proximity. We begin sinning more, and that's what it's like to live in sin, and it actually exhausts us because we never can satisfy ourselves, so we're always having to try to do more and more and more and more and more. And if you haven't gone down that rabbit trail, I am presuming that you probably have, because I know there was a point when I did, right? If you haven't, you know someone who has. It's most noticeable when it comes to sins like alcoholism or drug addiction or addiction to pornography. Okay. And sin just wears us out. Now, Lot, on the other hand, the New Testament actually calls Lot righteous. He is by no means the most moral person in the Old Testament story. In fact, Lot does some pretty immoral things throughout his life. Yet, Scripture refers to him as righteous, and these angels rescue Lot out of Sodom, even though he hesitates, even though he stays back, even though he wants to go into the city to warn his daughter's betrothed, right? The men who are to marry his daughters. And he goes into the city and he warns them, hey, God's going to destroy this city. And they think he's joking. They laugh at him. Yeah, right. Their identities are found there in the city. They do not believe God. Lot believes God, like Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. So all it takes for Lot to be counted righteous is that he believes God. And he heeds the warning of God that Sodom is about to be destroyed. Well, Lot is rescued out of Sodom, or out from the outskirts of Sodom, as fire from heaven is raining down upon Sodom. His wife looks back, turns back, and becomes a pillar of salt. I don't want to read too much into that. I don't want to don't want to make too much out of a descriptive text, because the text doesn't tell us that she fell so much in love with Sodom and she was looking back to her sin. The text doesn't tell us any of that. It also doesn't tell us the manner in which she becomes a pillar of salt. It just says she does. So let's be careful here not to read too much into the text, make something out of it that just isn't there. It is true that when we follow Christ, we don't keep going back to sin. That is true. But we don't receive that in this text of Scripture. We need to go elsewhere in Scripture to receive that. So Lot is rescued out. Sodom is destroyed by God. And the angels reveal, or Moses does, as he's telling the story of these angels rescuing Lot and his daughters away from Sodom, that God rescues Lot, brings Lot out of Sodom as he destroys Sodom, because he is being faithful to Abraham, because he's calling to mind these questions that Abraham asked him previously in the text. Will you indeed sweep away the righteous along with the wicked? And God does not. When God is judging, when it's God's wrath coming down, he does not take the righteous with the wicked.